اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين وابن سيد الوصين، السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة سيدتي نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور، السلام عليك وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت، وبقي الليل والنهار. يا أبا عبد الله، لقد عظمت الرزية وجلت وعظمت المصيبة بك علينا وعلى جميع أهل الإسلام، وجلت وعظمت مصيبتك في السماوات على جميع أهل السماوات، فلعن الله أمة أسست أساس الظلم والجور عليكم أهل البيت، ولعن الله أمة دفعتكم عن مقامكم وأزالتكم عن مراتبكم التي رتبكم الله فيها، ولعن الله أمة قتلتكم، ولعن الله الممهدين لهم بالتمكين من قتالكم. برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم ومن أشياعهم وأتباعهم وأوليائهم. يا أبا عبد الله، إني سلم لمن سالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم إلى يوم القيامة. ولعن الله آل زياد وآل مروان، ولعن الله بني أمية قاطبا، ولعن الله ابن مرجانا، ولعن الله عمر بن سعد، ولعن الله شمرا، ولعن الله أمة أسرجت وألجمت وتنقبت لقتالك. بأبي أنت وأمي، لقد عظم مصابي بك، فأسأل الله الذي أكرم مقامك وأكرمني بك أن يرزقني طلب ثارك مع إمام منصور من أهل بيت محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم اجعلني عندك وجيها بالحسين عليه السلام في الدنيا والآخرة. يا أبا عبد الله، إني أتقرب إلى الله وإلى رسوله وإلى أمير المؤمنين وإلى فاطمة وإلى الحسن وإليك بموالاتي وبالبراءة ممن أسس أساس ذلك وبنى عليه بنيانا وجرى في ظلمه وجوره عليكم وعلى أشياعكم. برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم وأتقرب إلى الله ثم إليكم بموالاتكم وموالاة وليكم وبالبراءة من أعدائكم والناصبين لكم الحرب وبالبراءة من أشياعهم وأتباعهم. إني سلم لمن سالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم وولي لمن والاكم وعدو لمن عاداكم. فأسأل الله الذي أكرمني بمعرفتكم ومعرفة أوليائكم ورزقني البراءة من أعدائكم أن يجعلني معكم في الدنيا والآخرة وأن يثبت لي عندكم قدم صدق في الدنيا والآخرة وأسأله أن يبلغني المقام المحمود لكم عند الله وأن يرزقني طلب ثاري مع إمام هدى ظاهر ناطق بالحق منكم. وأسأل الله بحقكم وبالشأن الذي لكم عنده أن يعطيني بمصابي بكم أفضل ما يعطي مصابا بمصيبته مصيبة ما أعظمها وأعظم رزيتها في الإسلام وفي جميع السماوات والأرض. اللهم اجعلني في مقامي هذا ممن تناله منك صلوات ورحمة ومغفرة. اللهم اجعل محياي محيا محمد وآل محمد ومماتي ممات محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إن هذا يوم تبركت به بنو أمية وابن آكلة الأكباد اللعين ابن اللعين على لسانك ولسان نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله في كل موطن وموقف وقف فيه نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم لعن أبا سفيان ومعاوية ويزيد بن معاوية عليهم منك اللعنة أبد الآبدين. وهذا يوم فرحت به آل زياد وآل مروان بقتلهم الحسين صلوات الله عليه. اللهم فضاعف عليهم اللعن منك والعذاب الأليم. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك في هذا اليوم وفي موقفي هذا وأيام حياتي بالبراءة منهم واللعنة عليهم وبالموالاة لنبيك وآل نبيك عليه وعليهم السلام. اللهم لعن أول ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تابع له على ذلك. اللهم لعن العصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله. اللهم لعنهم جميعا. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. اللهم خص أنت أول ظالم باللعن مني وابدأ به أولا ثم الثانية والثالثة والرابع. اللهم لعن يزيد خامسا ولعن عبيد الله بن زياد وابن مرجانة وعمر بن سعد وشمرا وآل أبي سفيان وآل زياد وآل مروان إلى يوم القيامة. سجدة. اللهم لك الحمد حمد الشاكرين لك على مصابهم. الحمد لله على عظيم رزيتي. اللهم ارزقني شفاعة الحسين يوم الورود وثبت لي قدم صدق عندك مع الحسين وأصحاب الحسين الذين بذلوا مهجهم دون الحسين عليه السلام. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. الحمد لله رب العالمين ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تعالى في كتابه المجيد: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لن تنالوا البر حتى تنفقوا مما تحبون وما تنفقوا من شيء فإن الله به عليم آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بذكرنا المصائب آل محمد. May Allah increase in our reward for the commemoration of the difficulties of Ali Muhammad. One of the important things that I really believe is important to focus on, and part of what motivates me personally in the efforts of taking the time to talk about and repeat concepts and philosophies, is the fact that many times things that we take as understood, for our children, those are new concepts. When we discuss an affair and we're talking to elders and we're talking to adults, many times that person has already made a decision in their life of who they are, what they'll do, and our assistance or our discussion with them moves that scale very slightly. An adult has already decided, for the most part, most adults have already decided what kind of a person they are, what kind of life they're going to live. Are they going to follow Islam? Are they not? And very rarely do circumstances or instances come in their life that move them away and very far away from decisions that they've made in life already. But a child hasn't yet decided. They don't know because they haven't entered into the practical world. Am I going to be a devout believer? Am I going to be a casual believer? Am I not going to be a believer? So every conversation and investment we make in a child and a young adult helps them determine their identity of who they're going to be in life. Which is why I believe it's very important that we talk to children. And even things that we take for granted, that are well understood and we take as a given, it's important to discuss with children and to explain with them. And devoting our time and giving from our time. I'll give you an example of why this is so significant. There's a hadith of our Holy Prophet, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, where a man in the community of Muslimin, after he died, he asked for all of his wealth to be given away in charity. And he asked that Rasulullah himself give away the wealth he left behind in charity. So the Holy Prophet took the responsibility of distributing this dead man's estate and giving it away in charity. And mashallah, this man had a lot of wealth. And when Rasulullah finished giving away everything, a half-rotten date was left. Half-rotten, half-eaten. Basically, half the date was still good, and the other half of the date was useless. And at that moment, Rasulullah picked up this date, and he said to the community that was present, it would have been better for this man to have given away this half-eaten date by his own hand in his life than the reward this man received for giving away all of his wealth after his death. Now, I like to teach children, and this hadith came up in a conversation in a madrasa class. And the students were about 13, 14 years old. And when they heard this, and mashallah, they attend Sunday schools, Saturday schools, they're involved with a religious institution, they're well-read children. They turned and said, that hadith is unbelievable. We don't believe that's true. And I said, that doesn't make any sense. That's an illogical statement. We can't believe that to be true. And my immediate reaction was, what do you mean? How is that possible? They said, come on. Sheikh, how is that possible that the man gets no reward for all of the things that he left and all of the charity that he did and all the good work that he did? Now, I had explained to them that a date, especially in the Arab culture, is not something that's sold one by one. When you buy dates, you buy them by the weight, by the package, which is determined by the weight, but in quantity. No one goes to a store and says, please sell me one date. Meaning that the value of that one date by itself, even if it was a complete date, it had no market value. Now to take a look at that date and see it as a half edible date, the other half was either rotten or the other half had been eaten, but it was half a date. That a date itself, one date, one tamar, has no value by itself. And that Rasulullah is saying that had he given that one date that itself has no value, would have given him more reward in the eyes of Allah than giving away all of his wealth and great amounts of wealth after his death. Really confused these kids. And I said, that doesn't make any sense. That's not possible. And this is where we start to realize the impact of society. That society and the culture that we live in constantly is affecting our children's decision-making process and their values. And to correct that or to balance that, we constantly have to be talking about things that by themselves to us may seem as natural, as something that is, without having to think about it, the conclusion we would come to. But for our children, those are concepts that need to be explained. Those are concepts that have to be established. And this conversation with these kids told me that their understanding of charitable work, their understanding of giving in the way of Allah, their understanding of what's a good deed in terms of a sacrifice for the sake of Allah is something that has been disturbed, that they don't understand what is it that Allah wants. You see, from the immediate story of not believing the value of the fact that giving even half a date with your own hand is more valuable in the eyes of Allah than to give material wealth after your death, the kids didn't understand the fact that Allah is khaliqun li kulli shay. Allah is the creator of everything. Allah doesn't need the wealth of humanity. Allah is that one who can give and continuously give without ever depleting his treasures or his ability to give more. And Allah doesn't want your wealth. Allah doesn't need your wealth. Allah can create as much wealth and He can create it for anyone from anywhere without having to think about it twice. These kids were under the assumption that Allah needs this wealth. That's why Allah should reward him whether he gave it alive or dead. He gave something to Allah. The value of giving for the sake of Allah is not in how much you give, but that you give from yourself and you make a sacrifice for the sake of Allah. This is why in Surah Ali Imran, verse number 92, it presents to us a very significant point that needs to be taught and explained and reminded for ourselves too, where Allah says, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. That you cannot attain righteousness. Bir is goodness in all of its attributes. لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ. You can't reach, you can't attain the goodness, righteousness, success. حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. Until and unless you spend and give away out of whatever it is that you love. This statement of Allah is a lesson for us, is an instruction for us, that Allah is not looking for your money and your wealth. There's no dollar amount that you give away. There's no item that you give away and you say, khalas, thank you, I've got my ticket into heaven. That, for example, I need to make $5 million, so I give $1 million away in the way of Allah, and bas khalas, I'll go to heaven then. I'll be set. No, there's no such thing as this number that exists. Allah is not in need of material. What Allah wants to see is that sacrifice from yourself. He wants to see that you have preferred and desired what Allah wants over what it is that you want in your life. This is what the desire of Allah is when He promotes and teaches us that we should give, and that giving is something beneficial to us. The purpose of that is the demonstration to prefer the desire of Allah over our own desires. And this is where the significance comes in, that we need to teach our kids, that they have to learn and establish that what Allah wants from us is that sacrifice, and us giving that sacrifice is what will make us and get us a reward with Allah. Not simply the amount that we give and how much that figure is that gets spent in the way of Allah. This idea, this concept that is present behind this statement, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ, is that every man has within him a desire, which is why Allah says, what you love, spend from what you love. That what we love is that desire for this dunya, the attachment to the material presence. And we have to give away from that and make the sacrifice from that. And that is what will bring us to success, because it will help us prioritize in our life that we should consider Allah before we consider ourselves. Now, to understand the application of this statement, we have to look in a few different points. First and foremost, we take a look at that how shaitan is always promoting us to delay the giving and to delay this process of attaching ourselves to Allah. The attacks of shaitan are that rely upon yourself, that you are the one that is capable, you are the one that has the power and the authority. This desire that shaitan puts in ourselves to have yaqeen and certainty that I am the one who is capable of doing something, I am the one who is capable of achieving something, is what his attempt is to separate us and sacrifice our relationship with Allah. Look in Surah Yasin, where we see in Surah Yasin, verse number 47, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ أَنْفِقُوا مِمَّا رَزَقَكُمُ اللَّهُ قَالَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَنُطْعِمُ مَنْ لَوْ يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ أَطْعَمَهُ إِنْ أَنْتُمْ إِلَّا فِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. This verse tells us how shaitan attacks. He prepares us for this factor that shaitan wants you to rely that what you earned is what you deserve, that it's you that did this, that you need to take care of yourself, that you have the responsibility to take care of your own needs, which is why when the believers say, well, the verse says, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ أَنْفِقُوا مِمَّا رَزَقَكُمُ اللَّهُ, that if you say to the people that spend from what Allah has given you and give away in charity from what Allah has given you as rizq, قَالَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, the disbelievers say to the believers, أَنُطْعِمُ مَنْ لَوْ يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ أَطْعَمَهُ, that, oh believing people, you think that we should spend from our money and feed that person who, if Allah wanted, Allah could have fed him, Allah could take care of him? In antum illa fi dhalalin mubin, that you're clearly wrong and you've lost your mind. I earned this. This is mine. If Allah wants, He can give it Himself. Why does He need what I earned? This is the attack of shaitan, which makes us believe that we did something to deserve this, that we did something to earn this. No. Anything that we possess is from the mercy and the blessing of Allah, that Allah provides for us and Allah supports us. And we have to be careful. The importance of looking at it in that light is explained to us that this giving away from yourself and this infaq, this nafaqa, giving of this nafaqa, is something so important in our lives, is something so significant to make sure that we give. Is that Allah describes a person at the last moments of his life in Surah Al-Munafiqun, where Allah says in Surah Munafiqun, verse number 10, وَأَنْفِقُوا مِمَّا رَزَقْنَاكُمْ مِنْ قَبْلَ أَنْ يَأْتِيَ أَحَدَكُمُ الْمَوْتِ. Allah says, and spend, give away, give in charity, out of what we have given you and what we provided you, what we gave you, not what you earned yourself. It's nothing that we did to deserve this. It's that Allah gave it to us. Spend out of what we have given you before death comes to you. من قبل أن يأتي أحدكم الموت. Before one of you comes to death. فيقول لو ربي لولا أخرتني إلى أجل قريب فأصدق وأكن من الصالحين. Allah is telling you at that last moment of death, when death comes to you, at that moment you're going to call out and you're going to say, Rabbi lawla akhartani ila ajalin kareeb. Oh Allah, why don't you delay me to a near time? Give me just a little bit more time. At that moment, we'll have the desire that, oh Allah, give me a little bit more time. Now I see death. Now I see the reality of what you've promised. I've seen the reality of what's about to happen to me. Give me a little bit more time. Allah, give me a little bit more time. إِلَىٰ أَجَلٍ قَرِيبٍ فَأَصَدَّقَ وَأَكُن مِّنَ الصَّالِحِينَ. So that I can give some charity and be amongst those who do good deeds. At the time of death, when a man comes to realize that all of this material that I possess, all of these things that are in my name, in a moment after my soul is pulled, all of this will be useless. It will mean nothing anymore. It won't benefit me anymore. At that moment, man's only desire and the greatest goodness that he can achieve for himself at that moment will be, oh Allah, give me just a little bit of time. Let me give this away in charity now, so that I can be amongst those who are righteous, amongst the salihin. That's what the ultimate desire at that last moment of life will be the hope and the desire that, oh Allah, let me give away from what is attached to my name and personality so that I can be amongst the righteous people. At that moment, it's not salat that you're asking for. It's not som that you're asking for. It's not dua. You're asking literally at that moment for the opportunity to give away from what you possess. Because that has the greatest impact for you. These material things that we tie ourselves to and that we prioritize, Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, explains it most eloquently, that a man after the moment of his death, he finds himself in a new difficult condition and he looks for any outlet to support him and help him in that moment. He looks for anything that will benefit for him. Amir al-Mu'mineen explains that a man at the moment after his death calls out, he says, oh my wealth, I preferred you over everything else in my life. I preferred you to every responsibility that I had. I dedicated my life to earning you. Now I'm in a state of great difficulty. Now my body doesn't work. I've lost everything that I had built. Can you help me? Come to my aid, O wealth. You were my priority in life. Now that my life is ended and I'm in danger, help me. And the wealth replies, Amir al-Mu'mineen is explaining, he says the wealth replies that today we can do nothing for you except to buy for you a place for you to be buried and a coffin for you to be buried in. All we can do is provide you your coffin and your grave. Then man, in this dejected condition that his priority has neglected him now, turns to his children and he says, oh my children, oh my offspring, I preferred you to the obedience of Allah. I preferred you to myself. I sacrificed from my desires for you. Now I'm in difficulty. Now I'm in a state of problem. What can you do to assist me? And Amir al-Mu'mineen replies that at that moment, all his children can do for him is that they can take him to his grave and bury him. That they can fulfill his rights, that he is buried with respect. And then they can't help him anymore. They can't bring him back to life. They can't correct his book of deeds that he's left. They can't do any of those actions for him. Now truly dejected, that neither his wealth and children that were his priority in life can assist him, man now turns and he says, oh my a'mal, oh my deeds, oh my affairs, oh my good actions, I have neglected you. I did not prefer you over my own desires and needs. But today I'm in difficulty. Can you offer me any assistance? And now his deeds call out, Labbaik, we are here. And from this day forward, we will be your assistant in all of your affairs and ensure that every transaction you make is beneficial for you. The importance of this hadith is the significance of giving perspective over what we prioritize in this life and what we prefer in this life, over the benefit and what it can do for us and how it can help us attain a good akhirah. And that it's important that we remember that these material aspects and these material priorities, when compared with the priority of Allah, cannot give us success. They can't bring us to a good conclusion. Our goal is that whatever we possess in this world, we learn that to give away from it for the sake of Allah, because Allah is the one who gave it to us, is the true success in the test of life. Now, when we say لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ, that you cannot attain success or righteousness until you give from that which you love, it doesn't necessarily mean and imply that what we give away from or what we lose in this life is only money, and that's the only thing that we need to give. No. Rather, we take a look and we see at the structure of life that there are many things that we love. There are many desires that we have, including and the many things that we prefer, especially this day and age. Wealth is one measure of success and happiness for a person. Another great measure of this success and happiness that we need to give from is our time. Many times it's not that we need a check written. It's not that a check is going to solve the problem and wealth will solve. No, it's the commitment of time. For example, your children need your time more than they need your money. A successful child, one who grows up on a path of righteousness, wealth is not that indicator that makes him a righteous child. It's time that makes him a righteous child. That time is also something we need to make sacrifices from and dedicate to the causes of Allah and the support for the causes of Allah. Now, after this entire pandemic and this difficult situation we're going through, one of the things that we know and is a reality is that as we go and we work on reopening our community centers and we work on reopening our Hussainiyat and we reopen our masajid, one of the most important things that we'll need support. We'll need the time of people to come and to help and establish a safe environment. We'll need time from people to ensure that places are clean and safe for participants. A check alone is not what's going to reopen our communities. It's going to take a great amount of effort from a great number of people. That time is also something valuable that we have to make sacrifices from for the sake of Allah. That we have to give away from our time and realize that while my time may be something that is valuable for me, the dedication to the Khaliq and the Creator is better for me than what I do with my time for myself. Our goal needs to be that whenever we have something of value or something precious or something of consideration, before we decide how it applies to my needs and my desires, I evaluate how do I dedicate or involve Allah in my affairs. How do I ensure that Allah is pleased with me through these actions? How do I ensure that Allah and the rida of Allah is what I consider in my decision-making process to ensure that Allah is a part of it? This is where we see that the message of Islam's fundamental has always been to think of Allah and what Allah wants from me before I think of what I want from myself. Look at, for example, in Surah Al-An'am. The last 5 verses of Surah An-Na'am are somewhat of a synopsis of the important concepts that are discussed and prepared in the entire surah. Which is why we take a look and we see that one of the important lines of Surah Al-An'am that explains our relationship with Allah and the purpose of the religion of Islam is when Allah commands our holy Prophet Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. In verse number 162, قُلْ إِنَّ الصَّلَاةِ وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايِ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ لَا شَرِيكَ لَهُ وَبِذَلِكَ أُمِرْتُ وَأَنَا أَوَّلُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. These 2 verses of the Holy Quran give us a synopsis of what the goal of Islam is. where Rasulullah is commanded by Allah to tell the people, قُلْ إِنَّ الصَّلَاةِ وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِ لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. That certainly my prayer, my sacrifice, my life and my death are for Allah, Lord of the worlds. La sharika lahu, who has no associate with him. There is no partner for him. وَبِذَلِكَ أُمِرْتُ, and this is what I am commanded of. وَأَنَا أَوَّلُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ, I am in the first of the Muslimin, and the first of those who submit to the will of Allah. This is telling us the greatest goal that we have to achieve in Islam, the message, the zubda, the final message that we boil down to, or the fundamental that we boil down to, is that everything that I have is for the sake of Allah. Everything that I do is for the sake of Allah. Whether it's my prayer, my sacrifice, my life, or my death, it's all for Allah. And that Rasulullah was the first of the Muslimin and the first to answer this call, and that this is the goal of Islam, is to learn that we dedicate ourselves to Allah. The statement, وَأَنَا أَوَّلُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ, and I am the first of the Muslimin, within itself is a profound statement. When we say that Islam was the same religion that Adam brought, that Nuh brought, that Ibrahim brought, that Musa brought, that Isa brought, say that all of these Anbiya were messengers of Islam, and all of them were Muslimin. But look at the statement of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, where he says, Ana awwalul Muslimin, that he was the first of the Muslimin, or he is the first of the Muslimin. And this tells us that our Prophet was a Prophet of Allah, and the first one to submit to the will of Allah and present himself in complete submission to Allah before anyone else. Which is why we see our Holy Prophet explain, I was a Prophet of Allah when Adam was still between the water and the clay. If we were together, this would have been a great moment for a salawat and a nara, but wherever we are, we'll recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. The greatness of Rasulullah is explained by this, as well as the purpose and the message of Islam. And this is an important message we need to convey to our children. Islam is not simply the praying and the fasting. It's the intention with which we present these items in the presence of Allah, and we commit ourselves in our entirety to Allah. This commitment to Allah, this attachment to Allah, this preference of Allah over ourselves, and this consideration to Allah is what brings us success, is what makes every deed into an act of worship. Our Holy Prophet even explained, he says, there are 70 doors of worship. The best door of worship that you have is to go and earn a halal living. Subhanallah, when we do things remembering Allah, then everything we do turns into ibadat. Even going out and working to earn that money becomes an act of worship of Allah. And this is why it's important that we understand that this sacrifice for the sake of Allah, this giving away for the sake of Allah, is to understand and remember to prioritize Him in our affairs. Now, it happens that there are many things that, for example, that can be taken from us, or that we can give willingly in the path of Allah, and understand that Allah is the one who rewards, and that whatever we give in His way is something that will attain success for us. When we go back to Surah Al Imran's verse number 92, where it says, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ, the rest of the verse reads, وَمَا تُنْفِقُوا مِنْ شَيْءٍ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ بِهِ عَلِيمٌ. And that whatever you spend and whatever you give from yourself, that certainly Allah is aware of it and Allah knows it. This is a really important factor to remember, that when we do give something and we do spend in the way of Allah, that we don't do it with the interest of showing people, or that people become aware of it, or that we think that anything that we have sacrificed is lost to us. Anything that has been taken from us or that we have given is lost to us, or that it's not something that's compensated. Every little thing, Allah says, that you do in my way, I know of and I'm conscious of it. When we say that مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ, from what you love, to give from that. There are examples of what we give from what we love that are difficult points for us to remember and to be comfortable with. One such point is the loss of a child. When we take a look and we see, for example, when Allah says, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَجُوعٍ وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. This verse of the Quran tells us all of the places where Allah can test us from, and where we can go through the difficulties in life, and what are the things that we can lose in this life. وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ, we will test you with something from khawf, from fear, from hunger. وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ, loss of wealth. وَالْأَنفُسِ, from yourselves. وَالثَّمَرَاتِ, and your fruit or your children, literally is what it means. And that you should be patient in this way. One of the greatest sacrifices that a person can have in their life that can be taken from them is the loss of a child. And sometimes it happens that a person who loses a child in their life, that for them it's a great and grievous loss that they don't understand, or that seems to be so extreme that we imagine, how could Allah do this to me? How could this happen to me? How is it possible that Allah wanted this? But Allah tells us in the Quran, وَمَا تُنْفِقُوا مِنْ شَيْءٍ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ بِهِ عَلِيمٌ, that Allah is certainly aware of everything that you give away, and that everything is compensated. Even this loss of a child has such a great status in the eyes of Allah, has such a great reward in the eyes of Allah, that we can't even imagine it. We see in the narrations of the Ahlul Bayt that teach us that on the Day of Judgment, that a child who passes away in this life is ma'soom, is innocent. There's no test for them, because they didn't reach the age of obligation. There are two series of narrations. One from an alim who explains that he says, I had a dream, and in my dream I was present in the field of mahshar, in the field of accounting, and it was the Day of Judgment, and we were standing in this oppressive heat and in this difficult condition. And while we stood there in this difficult condition, I saw that everyone was suffering from thirst. But as we were suffering from thirst, I saw that these young boys were running through the lines on the Day of Judgment and serving water to some people. As I looked at these boys with hope that one would offer me water, I recognized one of these boys. I saw that it was my nephew, my brother's son, who had passed away in his youth, was now running with water. So I stopped him. I stopped my nephew and I said, "Oh nephew, I am your uncle. I am suffering from thirst. You have water with you." And this water was the water from the pool of Kawthar. So he says, "Oh nephew, give me some water." He says, my nephew on the Day of Judgment replied to me that today I have been commanded that I can only quench the thirst of my father who lost me as a sacrifice to Allah in the world. When this man woke up, he recognized and he learned that though the loss of a child in this world is something difficult, the reward was that Allah made that a wasila for quenching the thirst of the father and the mother on that day, where it would be a great state of difficulty. In another narration we see from the A'immah alayhimus salam who explain that on the Day of Judgment, these innocent children, they will be immediately granted access to heaven before any account is taken from anyone, because they have no account. An innocent child who dies in this world has no accounting. And it's explained that they will be sent and they will say, "You are free to go to heaven." They will go to the doors of heaven and stop. And the malaika will call out to these children, "Oh child, you have been given permission to enter into heaven. You're free, there's no test for you. Why don't you go to heaven?" And those children will ask, "And our parents? What of our parents? How shall we go to heaven? How shall we enjoy Allah's pleasure when our parents who brought us into the world are still in their process of giving account for their deeds?" The angels will present the complaint of these children to Allah, and Allah will say, "Go to heaven and take your parents with you." The value of that sacrifice, the greatness and the azamat of that sacrifice, when we look at it in terms of dunya and in this world, we see that there is no greater loss that a person can suffer. There is no greater difficulty a person can go through than the process of losing a child. But take a look and see at the compensation that Allah gives in place of it in akhirah. That for you having given away in the way of Allah this child and gone through this great difficulty and this great sacrifice for the sake of Allah, Allah is the one who says, وَمَا تُنْفِقُوا مِنْ شَيْءٍ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ بِهِ عَلِيمٌ. That there's nothing that you give away or that you lose in this life except that Allah is aware of it. So the compensation with Allah is great as well too. And that compensation is something that we can't even imagine, that Allah is the one who is saying, and take your parents to heaven. There's no account for them. Now, when we talk about this topic of presenting our sacrifice for the sake of Allah and giving from ourselves, the extreme example is that even these losses, like our children, are something that Allah compensates for and is aware of. But our goal is that the same way we see the companions of Imam al-Hussain in the field of Karbala were willing to sacrifice their lives for Imam al-Hussain, who were willing to go through all of these difficulties for Imam al-Hussain and give away in the way of Allah everything that they had. While that's the ultimate goal, we don't get there in an instance. We get there through building towards this process and making it a habit to prefer Allah over ourselves. We get there by educating our children from a young age to prioritize and make sure anything that they desire, that they possess, that they enjoy, that they're proud of, that they're happy of, make sure that they give for the sake of Allah first. Not because Allah needs it, but because that Allah is more preferred and beloved in our eyes than our own desires. This becomes the important concept that we educate, so that our children learn to ensure that in consideration of all of their decisions is Allah first, so that when the great exam comes before them, they know to prioritize the desires of Allah before their own desires. We see that this verse of Surah Al Imran was something by which that even the ashab and the family of the Prophet were affected by. In one story, we take a look and we see that a personality who had one of the greatest gardens of dates that existed across the street from Masjid al-Nabawi, and it was a garden that he was very proud of, that had the best date trees in all of Medina, that when this verse was revealed, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ, that you cannot attain salvation until you give from that which you love, that when this verse was revealed, he came to Rasulullah and he says, "Oh Rasulullah, there is nothing more beloved to me than my garden of dates. I give it away to you for the sake of Allah, that you may do with it what you please." And Rasulullah replied, thank you for what you have given. Now I give it back to you to spread amongst your relatives and your family, to ensure that if there is destitute amongst your family, that their affairs are taken care of. One example, and this opens up a great door of discussion about the importance of ensuring that when we do give charity, we make sure that we begin by giving charity to even those in our family and our neighbors and our communities that are in need, to ensure that their needs are taken care of first. The concept that charity begins at home is not foreign in Islam. The second, we look at the example of Abu Dhar al-Ghaffari. It's narrated that one of the mu'mineen came to Abu Dhar and said, "Oh Abu Dhar, I'm in need of a camel. Can you assist me?" Abu Dhar said, "Yes, I have some camels. Come to my house, I will give you." When this man finally came to the house of Abu Dhar happened to be busy with some other responsibilities. So he said to this man, he said, "Listen, I'm busy right now. My camels are here. Go and pick the best camel that you can from there and take it for yourself." This person went to the camels of Abu Dhar and saw clearly that one was better than all the others. But he became embarrassed. He says, I needed assistance. Abu Dhar has offered me the best that he has. And then he became embarrassed to say to take the best thing from Abu Dhar. He was like, nah. So instead he picked a smaller, skinnier camel. And he went back to Abu Dhar and he said, Abu Dhar, thank you very much, my need is fulfilled. Abu Dhar looked at him and he says, but you didn't take my best camel. That's not the best camel that I own. I know the best camel that I own, and this isn't it. There's no comparison. Why did you take this one and not take what I told you to take? He replied something that's even common today in the Arabic language or in the Arab culture, خاف أنتم تحتاجها. I was afraid that maybe you would need it. I didn't want to take it from you. Maybe you needed it. Abu Dhar replied to him with a beautiful reply. He says, O servant of Allah, my need for that camel will be after my death, when I will need the value of aiding you more than I need that camel today. That camel will be in my need when I'm in my grave and my deeds are few and I need to have given away for the sake of Allah. Not today, not in this dunya, not now. It can't do for me now what it can do for me in akhirah. That concept is a very important concept to convey, to think of when we're giving away, when we're spending, when we're offering our service to Allah, that whatever we're giving away, whatever we're spending is something that's going to benefit us after our death. Shaitan is the one who tries to scare you, who tries to frighten you and to think about, if I give this away, what will I do when I need something? Where will I go? I will wind up in a state of great difficulty if I don't have this for myself. Let me not give from this, let me give from something else. This is the fear that Shaitan creates in our hearts. But whatever it is that we give is something that's returned to us, where we see the example of Sayyidah Zahra, salamullahi alayha, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. On the day when she was, after her marriage, where she was going to the house of her husband, Amir al-Mu'mineen, a new dress had been prepared for her that was a brand new item for her to enjoy, and that would be an outfit for her celebration of going to her new house. A poor person came to her door and said, "Oh Zahra, we are poor. Can you give us a dress so that we can wear it? That we can have a dress from you, that we have some clothing." In that moment, Sayyidah Zahra, thinking about that give from what you love, gives away her new dress to those that are in need because it was something beloved to her, and wears from her old dress and old clothing and goes for her wedding on that day. All of these are examples of demonstration for us of the importance that we have to teach this concept and to present to our children and educate them on the importance of making the sacrifices with our own hands, with presenting these sacrifices with our own hands in our life, not waiting that when I die it will go to the right purpose. No, Allah doesn't need your material. Allah will give, and Allah can create and provide for everyone without ever having a loss to Himself. The beauty, the power, the benefit of giving is when that sacrifice is made from your own hands, when you are the one who makes that sacrifice. Look at the companion Hujr ibn Adi, that companion of Amir al-Mu'mineen, that when the Banu Umayyah began the process of cursing Amir al-Mu'mineen in the city of Kufa, Hujr ibn Adi stood up in defiance against them and refused to allow the cursing of Ali ibn Abi Talib, until when he was cast out and sent to Muawiyah Mal'oon in Sham, that, "Oh Muawiyah, this is a troublemaker. Him and his family are troublemakers. You take care of them. I can't take care of them in the city of Kufa." Hujr ibn Adi, when he is sent to Muawiyah and given the ultimatum that either you curse Ali or we will kill you and your son and your companions, Hujr ibn Adi says, then death has come to me. They took Hujr ibn Adi with whoever his companions were and his son, and they took them out to then dispatch him to Akhirah. In that moment, they make a statement to Hujr, "Oh Hujr, we'll kill you first and your son afterwards." The intention that they had done this with was that it was an act of respect on their behalf, that it would be very difficult for a father to, na'uzubillah, see his son killed in front of him. So they said, "Oh Hujr, we'll kill you first and then we'll kill your son." Look at the reply of Hujr ibn Adi. He says, no, kill my son first. I said, huh, Hujr, we're giving you a respect that you shouldn't have to witness the death of your child, that you don't have to go through this painful experience. Hujr says, but by chance, I don't want that my son, on experiencing and seeing the murder of his father, should try to preserve his own life by the cursing of Ali ibn Abi Talib. I would rather that my lineage dies in front of my eyes than take the risk that one from my lineage should be responsible for the cursing of Ali ibn Abi Talib. This is the demonstration that on the path of haqq, how great of a sacrifice a person is willing to give for the sake of Allah. And this is what we saw in the field of Karbala, when we saw that Imam al-Hussain, who said that I have been given companions, unlike companions like these were not given to my grandfather, to my father, to my brother, to my mother. No one has had companions like I do. And Aba Abdullah sacrificed them all in the field of Karbala. And then it came time that he even sacrificed from his family. He had a nephew like Qasim that they said looked like a piece of the moon. That even the enemy, when they saw Qasim enter the battlefield, they said, how oppressed is this man that he sends a child that looks like a piece of the moon in front of us to fight. He gave up his nephews, Aun and Muhammad. He gave a brother like Abbas. He gave an infant like Asghar for the sake of Allah. He gave a son like Akbar. Oh, Abu Abdullah, what a sacrifice you made for Allah, that they said when Akbar entered into the battlefield, Imam al-Hussein raised his hands and he says, oh Allah, bear witness, I have sent the one who most looked like your prophet to an enemy that is heartless and ruthless and wants to kill him. Oh Allah, bear witness. Oh Umar Asad, you are ruining my lineage. May Allah ruin your lineage. Imam al-Hussein made the great sacrifice that he made even with Ali al-Akbar. How difficult a sacrifice that was, that they describe that when Ali al-Akbar fell in the field of Karbala, that he's the only one who gave the salam that needs no jawab, no reply. Alayka minni salam ya abata. My salam upon you, O father. That you don't have to reply, that even replying to the falling of your grown son would be difficult. They describe that Aba Abdullah, when he ran into the battlefield, as he did for every shaheed, when Akbar fell, one Mu'arrikh writes, he says that Zainab called out, "Oh Hussein, Akbar calls you from the right of the field, you run to the left of the field." The author replies, he says, Abu Abdullah replied, Ya Zainab, la tulumuni, oh Zainab, don't find fault with me. When Akbar fell, the light of my eyes left me. I don't know where to go to find him. They describe that Ali al-Akbar, when he fell on the field of Karbala, that the enemy surrounded him and waited. They waited to see how does an old man like Hussein bid farewell to a grown son in the field of Karbala. They said, we saw Abu Abdullah first come to Akbar after his life had left him and touch his cheek to the cheek of Akbar. They said when Hussein did not find comfort in this situation, we saw Abu Abdullah lay on the field of Karbala and hug Akbar to his chest. And in this condition, they said that we heard a woman, a lady call out, "Oh Hussein, I come to your assistance." Abu Abdullah replied, "Oh Zainab, why are you in the battlefield? Hussein is still alive." Sayyidah Zainab replies, she says, "Oh brother, I was worried that the loss of a son like Akbar would be too difficult for you to handle. I did not want you to suffer in pain at the loss of Akbar, so I came to assist you." Imam al-Hussein is that personality who gave even personalities like Ali al-Akbar, like Ali al-Asghar, to the extent where they say that when Abu Abdullah had nothing left to present, he was alone in the battlefield, he had fallen before the enemy. They said, we heard Abu Abdullah call out, "Ya Allah, this is Hussein. present in his own blood before you. Oh Allah, I have given everything in your love. I have given away anything. If Hussein still had anything left to give, he would have presented it before you now. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون رضا بقضائه وتسليما لأمره. Before we make dua for ourselves, we raise our hands 5 times the ayah of Amma Yujib, that by the wasila of these tears, by the wasila of the majlis of Aba Abdullah, may Allah hasten the reappearance of Sahibul Zaman and remove these difficulties from us. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ 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 اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز العجل الأكرم. 10 times we call out, يا الله 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 بحق حسين وجده وأبي وأمه وأخي وتسعة المأسومين من ذريته. Oh Allah, accept this small ibadat from us. Ya Allah, cover our flaws and forgive our sins. Oh Allah, we have gathered here with hajat. By the wasila of Ali Muhammad, fulfill our hajat. Oh Allah, there are those amongst our families, our communities, the mu'mineen around the world who are sick and suffering from sickness and are in need of shifa. Ya Allah, give the mu'mineen wherever they are shifa. Oh Allah, give us security from this disease and from these disasters that are befalling our community and the Muslimeen and all of the people around the world. Ya Allah, give shifa and aman to the people wherever they are. Ya Allah, keep our children and our family upon the upright path of Ali Muhammad. Ya Allah, hasten the reappearance of Sahibul Zaman and give us tawfiq and our families tawfiq to be amongst the supporters of Imam Zaman. And oh Allah, entitle us to the shafa'ah of Imam al-Hussain in dunya and in akhirah. Rahim Allah man yakra'a surat al-Fatiha ma'a salawat. Allahumma salli.
Hussain, Hussain, King of martyrs. Hussain, Hussain has been slaughtered. Hussain, Hussain, true believers. Hussain, Hussain are his weep. Everyone, Hussain, Hussain, King of martyrs. Hussain, Hussain has been slaughtered. Hussain, Hussain, true believers. Hussain, Hussain are his weepers. Here I lie, Ya Mawlai, run to me before I die. Here I lie, Ya Mawlai, run to me before I die. Oh my uncle, there's my blood, let me see you one last time. As I'm leaving, going further, I'm seeing your murder. As I'm leaving, going further, I'm seeing your murder. I'm a martyr slice for you, to be sacrificed for you, everyone. I'm a martyr slice for you, to be sacrificed for you. Oh, there will be pains for you when no one remains for you. when no one remains for you. Hussain, Hussain, King of martyrs. Hussain, Hussain has been slaughtered. Hussain, Hussain, true believers. Hussain, Hussain are his weepers. Hussain, Hussain, King of martyrs. Hussain, Hussain has been slaughtered. Hussain, Hussain, true believers. Hussain, Hussain are his weepers. Why the pain, Ya Hussain, while we die upon display? Why the pain, Ya Hussain, while we die upon display? Where's Muhammad? Where's Qasim? Your soldiers so young been slain. All the loved ones that you've carried, all the loved ones that you've carried, all the young ones you've buried, all the young ones you've buried, everyone, all the loved ones that you've carried, all the loved ones that you've carried, all the young ones you've buried, all the young ones you've buried. Now you witnessed all your sons swear to you by the Quran. Now you witnessed all your sons swear to you by the Quran. We will serve you on and on. Hussain, Hussain, Hussain John. Hussain, Hussain, Hussain John. Hussain, Hussain, King of martyrs. Hussain, Hussain has been slaughtered. Hussain, Hussain, true believers. Hussain, Hussain are his weepers. Hussain, Hussain has been slaughtered. Hussain, Hussain, King of martyrs. Hussain, Hussain, true believers. Hussain, Hussain are his weepers. Hussain, Hussain, King of martyrs. Hussain, Hussain has been slaughtered. Hussain, Hussain, true believers. Hussain, Hussain are his weepers. نادى علي يا مظهر العجائب. نادى علي يا مظهر العجائب. تجده عونا لك في النوائب. كل هم وغم سينجلي. كل هم وغم سينجلي بعظمتك يا الله. Everyone بعظمتك يا الله. بنبوتك يا محمد. بنبوتك يا محمد. بولايتك علي 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 Hussain, 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 Hussain. Hussain, 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 Hussain. Have al-Father ya Abbas. Have al-Father ya Abbas. Have al-Father ya Abbas. Everyone. Have al-Father ya Abbas. 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 Have al-Father ya أمير المؤمنين حيدر، 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 أمير المؤمنين، 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 أمير المؤمنين. يا زينب 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 يا زهرا 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 يا زهرا. السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا حسن بن علي، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين وعلى جميع شهداء كربلاء جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا علي بن الحسين زين العابدين، السلام عليك يا إمام محمد الباقر علم النبيين، السلام عليك يا إمام جعفر الصادق، السلام عليك يا إمام موسى الكاظم، السلام عليك يا علي بن موسى الرضا المرتضى، السلام عليك يا إمام محمد بن علي الجواد، السلام عليك يا إمام علي بن محمد الهادي، السلام عليك يا إمام حسن بن علي الزكي العسكري، السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والزمان، السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن ويا شريك القرآن، أجرك الله يا بقية الله. السلام عليكم يا آل بيت النبوة ومادر الرسالة جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. الأرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات رحم الله من يقرأ الفاتحة مع الصلوات.